Bengaluru's poor urban planning has led to significant issues for its residents, including water shortages, civic problems, heat waves, traffic congestion, and water flooding. Environmentalists and civic activists attribute these problems to the city's inadequate planning. Recently, an RTI revealed that 52% of buildings in Whitefield's White Rose layout lack valid approval from the Bruhat Bengaluru Mahanagara Palike, with 68 out of 72 buildings being illegal. Despite a 117-day process announced in July 2023 by the BBMP Chief Commissioner to address illegal buildings, residents report minimal action from the BBMP to curb their proliferation. Today, we are joined by Sandeep Anirudhan, a civic activist from the Whitefield Citizen Ward Committee, who has been actively pushing for action against these illegal buildings. He will shed light on the planning issues in Whitefield in today's episode. So, thank you so much for doing this with us. And firstly,
Thank you for having me.
yeah, thank you. Civic society has played a huge role in Bangalore anyway. We all know it that in terms of development, in terms of everything, the civic society has played a huge role. And now coming to the whole illegal buildings that's there in the Whitefield area, can we know what was the third update that you found in your RTR filings? What new information did you get to know about it? And what's the progress from July 2023? Because it's going to be almost 1 year now that the illegal demolitions had to be, demolished and the buildings had to be cleaned up. What's the update? Are there any changes?
Well, there are a couple of milestones. One is July 2023 is when the BBMP commissioner issued a circular detailing the 117-day timeline
Plan.
for demolition of any illegal building, be it unauthorized or deviation. That was under pressure from the Karnataka High Court under the unauthorized buildings PIL that is ongoing. So that happened in July 2023. Then, because the notice was out, we started putting pressure on our local administration, the zonal commissioner's office. And what they said was they don't have enough manpower to cover all of the Madhepura zone, but they will try it out in one layout. If it works, then they'll replicate it in another layout. Because, mind you, BBMP just doesn't have a good track record of enforcement. So for them, it was a culture change to even start
task
enforcing.
to complete this process also.
So, and there was a lot of confusion. Before this, there was no clear direction, there was no clear circular. So the 2023 July circular is a landmark in itself because it detailed a clear process. It gave the devolution of authority, the officials in charge, everything is clearly outlined. So then what happened was there are 4 or 5 layouts in Whitefield which have become slums. We call them PG slums because of the runaway growth of unauthorized buildings, illegal buildings, the crowding of the layouts has become so much. It's got 25 times more crowding density than the layout we take. So that it was becoming a mess.
It's an overpopulated zone completely, if we say that.
Overpopulated, therefore the civic services were crumbling. You had sewage flowing on the streets. There are no tarring on the roads. There's no water supply. Then power shortages, all kinds of things, and then crowding, extreme crowding. People can't walk on the streets, leave alone vehicles. So it was a terrible mess, and then it was affecting all the surrounding areas because when you have extreme crowding in one layout, then it spills over into problems to the remaining areas. So all our areas, we have people loitering till early morning now because they don't want to stay in their crowded buildings, which are built without setbacks or without following bylaws. Therefore, they don't have light, they don't have ventilation. It must be really dingy inside. So because of this, people tend to spend more time outside, and it's creating law and order issues for the entire area.
Residents,
So we kept complaining. So the BBMP, I think the Joint Commissioner directed the town planning ADTP and the Assistant Executive Engineer to undertake a survey in White Rose layout to begin with. When they first did a survey, prima facie, they identified immediately about 40 buildings. That became headline news. This was in October of 2023. Then when they did a repeat survey the next month, they found that there were more. There were a lot of plan deviations, there were a lot of other things. So eventually the final numbers. So now when we filed an RTA to find out what is the final numbers, they said there are 72 buildings in 2023 October, of which 68 had violations. That's almost 95% of the buildings, and of which 30 buildings have plan deviation violations, and 38 buildings have no plan. They have not even taken plan approval. They just constructed illegal
It's
buildings.
illegal,
So this is
completely illegal.
completely illegal. So this is a state of lawlessness. It shows it's a very sorry state of affairs that Bengaluru has no governance. People are just doing whatever they feel. Nobody is respecting the law. Nobody is respecting bylaws. Nobody is even taking permission from the government anymore. This is a very sad state of affairs, and the problem is, if it affects nobody, it's a different thing. It's completely destroying the neighborhood. Today, you have so much crowding on the streets, pollution, noise, law and order problems. So this is what the Supreme Court in 2023 highlighted in a judgment on a case related to Chandigarh. The Supreme Court made a statement that don't make Chandigarh like Bengaluru. So Bengaluru is being used as an example of the worst way to govern a city. And if that was not enough to add insult to injury, it sent a letter to all the chief secretaries of the entire country, to all the states, saying don't follow the
Do this
Bengaluru
model, yeah.
respect environment, follow planned development, because Bengaluru, and it called Bengaluru a template for urban ruin due to unplanned development. And this is a prime example of that. And this is happening all over Whitefield. It's happening all over Bengaluru now, especially outlying areas, the what do you call the peripheral areas where largely there is
Not
no
planned
planning.
properly, yeah.
Yeah. And we don't have a master plan. Our last master plan expired in 2015. And so this points to the complete breakdown in governance. We don't have planning, we don't have governance, total lawlessness happening everywhere. And there is no accountability, no responsibility. I wonder if officials even know what their job is, because nobody's doing their job.
So now you mentioned PG slums. So these are basically the PG buildings that we have where most likely the migrants are living, either students or people who are working here for some months. So it's basically the migrants who are staying in these buildings and in the midst of these where it's not planned completely. So there are a few things that I want to know about it. Firstly, I think you gave us a clear picture of how the whole what it looks like, what the illegal buildings is causing right now to the residents of the nearby areas also. But can we understand, since the BBMP had already passed an order, there was a clear-cut plan that was supposed to happen. What happened after that? Why it's been more than 117 days? Where is the problem coming?
Two perspectives to this. One is the BBMP commissioner issued this order to the entire city. And in the High Court proceedings of the unauthorized construction PIL, the court demanded action from the BBMP throughout the city. So all the engineers and all the wards have been directed to survey, issue notices as per the timeline chart, and demolish all the buildings throughout the city in 170 days. This is something that should have happened throughout the city. So it started in July. By 117 days means it's about 4 months, right?
Yeah.
So by November, actually, all the illegal buildings throughout the city were to be demolished, which means the city government, which is BBMP, is actually in contempt of court now because they haven't carried out this. So I'm sure in the next hearing of the PIL, the question will be, what have you done? Why haven't you carried out these orders? So the commissioner will again be pulled up possibly for contempt of court, which I think it's become a habit for BBMP commissioners to be facing contempt of court. It keeps going on. But in the specific instances where we actually put pressure on all the civic authorities to act in Whitefield, they started with White Rose Layout. They started action in October, so they should have completed the whole process by February.
Yeah.
So end of February, we noticed that nothing was happening. Besides, during October to December, they also took the initiative to deploy BBMP marshals, and they did not allow any illegal construction to continue, which means all the construction came to a stop for a period of 2 months. But unfortunately, they had borrowed marshals from the SWM, that's a solid waste management department, and they didn't get their own marshals deployed exclusively for town planning or for engineering. So once the SWM people pulled back their marshals, they're continuing. I mean, all the illegal construction.
So there was no manpower for this with the BBMP department.
Pardon?
So there was no manpower to handle this with the BBMP department.
So this is what we realized. The missing link for enforcement in BBMP is that they don't have a policing department. So when they deployed a couple of marshals who were actually belonging to SWM, but they were put on duty here 24/7, all illegal construction stopped. So that's what they need. The BBMP needs an exclusive marshal team to monitor every ward, to observe any construction happening, demand building plan approvals, make sure that they display. Under law, any construction is supposed to commence only after they display the building plan approval outside their wall for public viewing.
Right. It's always there outside the building when the construction is going on.
But here, nobody puts up any display. If you go to any foreign country, you'll have big boards. It will be as big as a building, which will say the license, building plan license given, who's the contractor, who's the consultant, everything.
All the details are at least.
We are the IT capital. We are the IT capital. We display nothing. There's no transparency at all. And it's in the bylaws. It's actual law that they have to do it. In fact, it says like when a building plan approval is issued to any developer or owner of a site, it clearly says this building plan approval is given to you subject to the display of this outside your wall. It's there in the document itself. Which, when it says it's a conditional issue subject to display, it also means that if you do not display, then it is cancelled. It's automatically cancelled. So the problem is nobody is really concerned with the law. Nobody is following it, nor do the officials take it upon themselves to enforce it or penalize or anything. So this is the state of affairs right now, where there is zero governance. So when we actually filed the RTI, the response we got now is that they did the survey in October, and of course, I told you what happened. They stopped all construction. But after that, there are two different processes that have to be followed. Like for buildings that have obtained building plan approvals but are deviating, the town planning department has to pursue steps 1 to 7. I'm sorry, I had a power off.
I realized it. We'll wait for that then. That won't be a problem. It's happening even in my area.
It's back. So that 1 to 7 steps in that chart is supposed in Annexure 2 and Annexure 1 is supposed to be conducted by Town Planning Department, the ADTP. What we found is out of the 30 deviated buildings, the Town Planning Department have followed through to step 4 or 5 on all 30 buildings. 10 of those buildings have a stay order. So they're waiting to evacuate stay and then they will complete it. Those 20 buildings, they have issued, they've gone up to 7 steps. They've sent proposal to the executive engineer. So from there, step 8 to 12 is to be carried out by the executive engineer and AWE. They have not done anything about it. So that's where it is stuck. Now on the 38 buildings which are completely unauthorized, the executive engineer and AWE are supposed to carry through all the steps. That's 1 to 12. Now there, as far as we've heard, they have not responded to our RTI, and we hear that they've done nothing. So this is where both of these processes are stuck. It's largely because the engineering team, the zonal engineering, the ward engineering, they are either inactive or they are complicit, because there are a lot of rumors that they don't do their work and they take money to not do their job. So there's
a lot of bribing and corruption involved at least from step 8 till step 7 it's done. At least that's what.
So the town planning in this particular instance, town planning have completed the steps almost. It's only the engineering teams that have to take up. But if the town planning has carried out at least half the process, by now the engineering should have finished the other half.
Or at least should be midway somewhere. Even if they've not completed it, has to be started.
Because we've crossed 200 days, they should have finished it in 117 days. It's almost double the time. They should have finished something, and which is what we're disappointed about. and we suspect that there is lack of intent.
Okay. And when you say lack of intent, I'm assuming you've also approached the authorities from the engineering team to see where the work is. But you have, like you mentioned, that even in the RTI filings, you've not received any response back.
Correct.
So when you say
Please
lack of, yeah, please continue. Yeah, you were saying something.
finish your question.
Yes, I want to know when you say lack of intent, what does that mean and what could be the reasons for it? Because legally, these are not, uh, these are not the buildings that are supposed to be there in the first place. So
Correct.
there is an order, there are already the processes started. So they can't really stop it because that's the intent. So what could be the reason and how are we able to manage it for so long?
I think there's a complete disconnect in the BBMP. See, the problem with BBMP is it's very badly managed.
Mm.
The practices are bad, the hierarchies are confusing, everything is a mess. Apparently, the zonal authorities have very little control over the engineering. The engineering seems to be a power unto itself. Whatever they tell them to do, they don't seem to be listening. The joint commissioner keeps saying that these ward engineers don't listen to her. The uh, town planning is also complaining that we have done our job, those people are not doing their job. So there seems to be this lack of cohesion in the
Intercommunication.
way things are
Yeah.
run. Now the zonal, I spoke to the executive engineer directly and the AW directly. The executive engineer just passed the buck. He said it's the job of the AW. He's supposed to do it. You ask him. Now AW on the other hand, when you ask him anything, he talks about everything else except the issue. I'm asking him what specifically we've given you an RTI. Tell us what happened to these 72 buildings. And he says we've issued 3,000 notices all over Bengaluru. And all that is happening. So I said, I don't care about the 3,000. Tell me what specifically has happened with 72 because he's just following this case.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't give any answer. He says, we'll give you an RTI response. You wait for that. So we still haven't obtained it. We'd like to see what he gives us.
And how many days has it been
So
since you filed the RTI response?
it's a month.
That's way beyond the
Applied.
RTI
It's exactly a month
timeline.
since we applied. Yeah, it's been a month since we gave the RTI request, so we should have got it by now.
Yeah, ideally.
So now if it doesn't come, we'll have to apply for an appeal.
So
And then possibly we'll have to probably file a complaint in the Lokayukta that these people are withholding information. I don't know. We'll have to pursue those options. But the point is, uh, the whole idea is that government has to be transparent. The RTI Act itself says that in Section 4, it says that every government department and authority should suo moto disclose public information on websites electronically, which
it
means
has to be available.
all of these things they have to actually put on the website, and we should not have to run behind them for information.
Again, yes. Also, are there people still living in these buildings? What has happened after the
Yeah.
construction? There are people now.
Yeah, whole lot of buildings were actually just commenced construction when it started. They've actually completed. A lot of them, 80% of them have completed construction after the notices were issued. Which means these builders think they can get away with anything, that even if there are notices, no action will be taken. That's perhaps because of the track record of BBMP, which never acts. So possibly under High Court pressure now, because there is a lot of scrutiny, the BBMP might act, which means it will come as a shock to them. And the other aspect, see, you are mentioning that most of the dwellers in these are like new migrants. Actually, when new migrants come, they don't know the place.
Yeah.
They get into these PG buildings, they don't know that they are such a bad thing. It's
Yeah,
crowded and it's crowded.
It's just mostly they will online, they will check it to find a place and they might not know about the whole
What
thorough
I've
check.
noticed here is the attrition is very high. They come, they stay for 2-3 months, and they run away from here because they can't stay in that crowding and lack of ventilation, lack of light. So I think it is a very bad idea for builders to construct things like this because they're actually troubling their own customers by giving such bad quality of life. It's a crime to even do that. Now the second important thing is almost all these buildings are funded from other states.
Okay, so these are not
None
even
of the builders are
Karnataka
local.
state.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cash flow coming from some other states. We suspect there are a lot of rumors about what money it is. It looks like black money that's coming here to get whitewashed. I think the enforcement directorate, instead of running after all these petty criminals and politicians, they should go after this money flow and find out where it's coming from. And they should actually find out what kind of money it is, why so much money is coming to Bengaluru, and
Why do we have
What is the
72
purpose of it?
buildings in a locality where it was not supposed
That
to
is just
be?
one locality. If you look at
Yeah,
all the
so we
buildings, count
have
the buildings.
across Bangalore what it would look
There's a
like.
huge chunk of money coming here, and then it gets whitewashed because most of the builders build and immediately
Yeah.
resell, and then somebody
Mhm.
else takes it up for
Yeah.
operation. So it's a huge amount of white churning going on, and we suspect that there's a big scam behind this whole thing,
Okay.
the funding of these operations, and that's why they don't respect the law. See, traditionally in Bengaluru, Bengaloreans committing any kind of deviation of building plan means 10%, 20%, maybe
Hmm.
30%.
Yeah.
The minimum violation any of these buildings have done is 300, 400, 500%.
So that's way
This is
beyond
like they
the
commit 10 times, 20
yeah.
times more violation. Yeah. So it's a complete disrespect for laws. They don't care about the place. They don't care about local laws. And all of them are outsiders. None of them are for Bengaluru.
Hmm.
And at least 70 to 80% of all that money is coming from Andhra. So we wonder what those funds are, and I don't know what it is about. But there needs to be an inquiry on this. If the government is serious about curbing illegal money flows and stuff like that, they should investigate this. The Enforcement Directorate should do it.
Also, recently now we had a lot of water shortage, and Whitefield was on top of that. We saw that the most prestigious buildings did not have water. So now coming to these places, didn't it increase? What was the situation like, especially during the summers because of the heat, as well as the shortage, water shortage? What was that like in the complete surrounding area? What happened during that time?
Let me correct you. Let me correct you. It is not that we had. It was
Yeah,
not
it's
was a
still
water
there.
shortage.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
still
a
there. Right.
whatever water shortage we had during peak
Hmm.
summer. It's continuing even now.
That's right.
Almost every building here is getting water tankers regularly, which
Hmm.
means the BWSB
Yeah.
water is not sufficient. And it can't be sufficient because the density of these
Yeah.
constructions and buildings are so high. Literally, all the PG buildings here and all the illegal buildings, they commit illegalities at many levels.
Mhm.
Construction itself is
It's
illegal.
there, yeah.
But before every construction, they have drilled about 3 to 4 borewells in every site.
Okay. So now, firstly, there is a
So not
building, and
only
then there are borewells already drilled, which pull out the
yeah,
water
the first
of
thing they
the
do is
land.
they take up a site,
Yeah.
they drill about 3 to 4 illegal borewells. They use that water for construction, which is completely banned.
Yeah.
And and again, under the law, using that water to run a business is also banned because
Yeah.
you cannot use commercial groundwater cannot be used commercially. So they just about violate all the laws. And then PG buildings are commercial operations. I doubt they pay taxes. They're supposed to pay
Hmm.
12% GST. I'm sure none of them are
Right.
doing it. So at multiple levels, their behavior is very deviant. So that is why the government should not look at this entire segment with any sympathy, because these people are coming to Bengaluru, they're destroying it, they pay higher prices to procure. In
Hmm.
fact, whatever the market value is, they sometimes pay double the value for buying the property, and then they do double the violations to recover that money. In the process, they destroy the entire neighborhood,
Land.
they destroy the civic amenities, they destroy the civic availability, and they
The
destroy the
resources
quality of life
across
of
the
everything.
neighborhood as well.
Yeah. And water shortage continues even
Hmm.
now. And what happens with these people? They drill 2 3 borewells in each side. They have sucked out all the
Yeah.
groundwater. Now nobody has water. Almost all the wells are dry. All the surrounding areas which had borewells, their water is also, the aquifers have dried up. So now everybody is dependent on tanker water.
Oh, yeah.
So on an app like today, yesterday, day before, the streets you will see tankers at every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes there's some tanker coming and supplying water somewhere. It's become a tanker city. Whitefield is just a tanker zone. You have and the tankers are another level of headache. Most of them violate. I mean, drive recklessly. They have air horns. They violate traffic laws. Many of them don't even have number plate.
Yeah.
That's another set of
So it's like a loop
recklessness.
of problems coming from the buildings that
Exactly.
started, and now it's spreading to all the residents in the neighboring areas as well. And
Exactly.
do we have any information about the first builders who actually own the building before it goes on to the other residents or people who buy the property later? Is there any information? Because hasn't the government tried tracking them down? Because it's illegal. They
No,
figured out that it was
in the
illegal.
RTI,
Yeah,
I think I've shared an RTI the disclosure
yeah,
with you. In fact, the ADTP has made a list of all the owners
exactly. Yeah.
who own those properties. They do have a list whenever they inquire,
Wanted
because
to.
if they apply for building plan approval, or the registrar will have the names and
Yeah.
names of the owners of the lands, the sub-registrar.
So there is no action
And
taken against them yet.
no, the government, even under extreme pressure, doesn't take any action. So what do you expect they'll take action otherwise?
So it's
The
still
High
like
Court wouldn't have to be breathing down the neck of the government if they were taking action on their own. So governance in Bengaluru, we've come to a state where we can't expect anything good. It's bad news all the time. Under the High Court's various interventions, the government manages
manage.
to act as if it's trying, yeah, it pretends to try to do something, but it really doesn't go the full distance. And only when, special drives like this happen, when citizens have their glare on it, then they try to do something. So otherwise, it's an incredibly bad situation for Bengaluru.
So it's clearly the governance is failing the people of the city right now. And now, what
Yeah,
are
yeah.
the next action plans that you plan to take regarding these?
No, we citizens, we are pursuing. We are just providing like we just
You're following
inquiring and
the,
watching what procedures.
yeah, following the development
Uh,
that's happening.
yeah, we're just following the developments. We'll see in future if we have to take any intervention, maybe legally or otherwise, because it's not just White House layout that we're concerned with. We're concerned with all the layouts
That's
here, all the construction that's happening. If the government doesn't act, then we'll possibly file a PIL and ask the courts to intervene and ensure that the government carries out the orders of the High Court. Otherwise, at some point, I think the courts have to call an end to this complete inaction and ineptitude and dereliction of duty, and possibly should start punishing these officials. It's largely because there are no punishments given to any of these officials that they actually take the risks of not doing
It's
anything.
just that the warnings that keep piling up and then that warnings don't turn effectively into an action
Yeah.
from these authorities. And
So
lastly,
governance is seriously broken in Bengaluru.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
good. And lastly, uh, what do you expect? What would you ideally want from these authorities? Because even this demolition seems to be a long way right now. It doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon, at least. So, what would the ideal be? And
Even
even
if
if the demolition happens, it's going to be a huge thing because there are going to be people who live in that which might not agree. We have to again correct the infrastructure that's there. What would that would be another mess to clean up. So, what would you?
no, the 117-day process covers the process of issuing notice for evacuation, evacuating, and then demolition and all that. Now, I think that's covered. The High Court has issued those
Yeah,
directions. Yeah. So, well, the market itself, see, the point is we've seen very high attrition. All these newcomers to Bengaluru come and land up in these PG slums. After 2-3 months, they get fed up. They leave and they find
keep
apartments a
searching
little
different
distance
places.
away.
Yeah,
Yeah. So there is enough housing getting developed in more outlying areas, which are more comfortable, which are
and
not
legally
slum-like conditions
done.
like these.
Yeah.
So I don't think, maybe it'll actually be a benefit to those people that they don't have to come and live in these dwelling situations and then destroy the neighborhoods as well. So I think the balance will be found once the government starts acting on the laws. The point is there has to be lawfulness. You can't have a city that exists in lawlessness forever. And once the laws are respected by everyone, then the market will actually even out to a more reasonable, it will behave properly. Now, what's happening because of this lawlessness, even the prices in the market are at artificial levels. The square foot rate that should actually go at 6,000 square feet is being sold at 12,000, 15,000 per square foot, more than double the price. Why? Because people are willing to violate, not otherwise. Now, the government enforces seriously what will happen. Any buyer will think, well, I cannot build beyond the permissible
Yeah.
square footage as per the bylaws. So I will only give the actual price. I'll only give you 6,000. So then what will happen? The price will stabilize at a fair point. Now, everybody is after a quick buck and they are demolishing the city. That's not fair.
And there's no watch
I mean, a whole lot of
over this
people
things.
who live here forever are having to face multitude of problems because of all these newcomers who don't want to respect laws. The old timers respected laws. Nobody has violated. Everybody is left proper. In fact, they are the ones who are suffering because of these slums that are developing. because people come and hang around in their areas because it's more comfortable here.
Right.
So,
It's more crowded now.
yeah.
So it's at least the demolition is the first step that you would request the government to take as quickly as possible
No, it's not even a
and follow
request.
the
They are
law.
mandated
Yeah.
to hit their job. Now, if these officials don't want to do their job, let them resign. Nobody is forcing them to work for the government and follow the laws. If they don't want to do their duties, if they don't wish to do their job, just quit and leave. Why are they becoming a burden on society? Officials have no right to do this. These engineers don't have any right to facilitate the crumbling of the city. Their duty is to prevent it. They should have some sense of duty, commitment to the city, to the constitution, to the laws, to the service rules, right? This cannot go
They are
on. I mean, this
supposed to
entire
follow
city
it.
will, yeah, otherwise the city will become unlivable. We cannot live here. We'll all have to leave.
So at the end, can we conclude it by saying this, that having the right laws, at least the laws and practice, would help prevent a lot of things that's going around in Bengaluru in terms of the buildings, the civic issues that we face. It could be reduced to a huge extent if the governments, the authorities take the action
Absolutely.
and
See,
do their job.
the laws actually exist for a purpose,
Yeah.
right? And that's to facilitate planned development. If all of those are violated, I'm not even talking about civic amenities crumbling, people it becoming inconvenient and stuff like that. Look at what the city is facing today. We have 95% concretization already. If this goes on, our concretization will become not 100%, it will become 200% because they are building vertically double what they're permitted. Okay. Now, as a consequence, what's happening? We've already had, and the wider things that have happened to Bengaluru are gross. In the last 3 to 4 decades, we've lost 97% of our green cover.
Yeah.
So the capacity of the city to take pollution, heat is gone. That is why we had the worst heat wave of Bengaluru ever. The water crisis has been the worst. Why? All these illegal constructions have taken out all the groundwater. 50% of Bengaluru depends on groundwater. So now there's no groundwater for anyone. And now we are dependent on tankers which bring water from outside the city.
Yeah.
All the tankers are bringing water from outside the city, not from in the city. So we have a water crisis because of this kind of crowding. So if we don't respect the laws and the bylaws laid out, the consequence is that the city will face disaster. It will become unlivable for people. It will be extremely polluted. The pollution levels are going through the roof. Temperatures are going through the roof. Water crisis is
the flooding is also going
feature.
through the roof
and because
right
of
now.
all of this concretization, yeah, and all our wetlands are encroached, and there is no our lakes are disappeared, and there's concretization. So we are flooding every year. So we are facing the consequences either way. So all of this is because of unplanned development, and that's exactly what the Supreme Court said.
We're coming back to the first point. Don't be Bengaluru again. But
yeah,
thank you
don't
so
make a
much.
Bengaluru of any place. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing us information on this and helping us understand and break down the whole process. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.